Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be joined by Jeff Greenfield from Provalytics. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Seth. It's a pleasure.
Our pleasure. Let's go back in time a little bit. How did you get started?
Well, that's an interesting question. I was in the media business. I was actually buying media for a publicly traded weight loss company. And we ran into this issue where every sale we had 5 or 6 different partners that were claiming credit. All of them were saying, hey, I got you that sale. Pay me my commission. And so it turned out to be a big issue. It was costing our client way too much money. And so we dealt with this issue that all marketers deal with, which is half the money I spend in marketing is wasted. The only problem is that I don't know which half.
Yes, so quote from David Ogilvy, I believe.
Actually, it's John Wanamaker.
The Ogilvy said only the direct response guys know what they're doing.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So that led to this kind of the attribution problem. How do you determine who gets credit? And that led to me building out my first attribution company called C3 Metrics. This was in 2008, at the beginning of really the explosion of the digital revolution, if you will, for advertising and marketing. I scaled that company up, exited there after about 12 years, thinking I would never go back to this. But then we went through this whole COVID pandemic thing where privacy became the centralized tenet to the advertising ecosystem. And as a result, what I had built before was no longer going to work. I saw there was another opportunity to jump back in. So I developed a new platform utilizing a combination of AI and machine learning. And that led to the development of Provalytics. So here I am again.
Here you are again. I am sure the longer version of that story could probably fill a book somewhere if it hasn't already. So let's talk about what lessons you learned from your earlier entrepreneurial and data-driven attribution efforts that have kind of influenced how you're leading Provalytics today.
Well, the biggest one for me is that when I was leading Provalytics, it was a 24/7 deal. There was never a time that I went away on a family trip or vacation that my phone wasn't on. And as a result, there was never a time where I wasn't interrupted during an event or another. I remember being out to dinner with my wife for Valentine's Day, and I got an urgent text message from an employee that was having a personal issue that I was able to help him with. What I decided this time around is that that's no way to live a life. So what I've done is I've learned to really appreciate my weekends, my time off, and put up those barriers that are really important. You can still charge forward really hard, but you can do it while you're enjoying yourself as well.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to make that transition. I know what it's like to get a text or a phone call when you're on a vacation or a date, so I can certainly feel your pain there. Talk a little bit about, in our iOS post 14, update where attribution has gotten harder and harder, how you're able to pull it off.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because what's happened in this world in terms of the digital ecosystem is that it used to be, before digital, everything was broad-based marketing. You could go after a certain geo or a certain demographic based upon what you thought people watched or listened to. But the whole idea behind digital marketing is this user level marketing. And that's what the last 20 years or so has been about, where you could target and measure at those levels. Well, guess what? We're now living in a world where you cannot target at the user level anymore and you can't measure anymore. So the only way to get around this in order to measure appropriately in the post-iOS world is we have to go back to the future. So we have to look and see what worked back in the days before digital marketing. And before digital marketing, what worked was a statistical modeling technique called marketing mix modeling. It's how brands like Pepsi, Coke, and BMW built their brands. Now, there was not a direct, what we call deterministic, where you could track users, but hell, the stuff worked really well. But the problem is that it was at a very broad-based level. Digital marketers are used to very granular tactical outputs, and they want data to be refreshed more frequently than once every 2 to 3 years. And that's what we did. So we took the techniques of the past, brought them up to date with the super high fast supercomputers that we have today, and it gives the same type of output that digital marketers are used to, but without going after that user level. And that's what's cool about it.
So how do you, I mean, let's get a little bit, we don't want obviously to give away the secret sauce, but I'd like to get in the weeds a little bit because we're in a, as you call it, a privacy-centric, cookieless, AI-driven world. So how do I get, close to real-time, data when we don't trust our open rates and we don't trust attribution, and we don't trust the metrics that, Facebook ad manager or whatever are reporting to us?
Well, that's where we get our name, Provalytics. Prova is an Italian word that means proof. And so when it comes to living in this world now, we first have to understand that we're not going to have deterministic anymore. It's not going to happen. So we're dealing now with models, and we're dealing with probabilistic models. And there's an old saying that all models are wrong, some are useful. So how do you determine that the model that you're using, the approach that you're using is actually accurate? And the way you do that is you validate it, you back test it. And what I mean is that we take our models and we train the model for a period of time. Let's say we've got a year's worth of your data, and you've just updated it. You've just given us the most recent week. We're going to go back 365 days. We're going to train it. And when I say train it, we're going to give it your marketing data. We're going to say, on this day, this was the marketing that was going on, and these were the sales for that day, or these were the orders for that day. And then we're going to hold back. We're going to run the model multiple times, and we're going to hold back data. So on some days, we're going to give it the marketing, but we're not going to give it the sales. We're going to ask the model to predict. And we'll do this a number of times to where we hold back actually 100% of the data. And from that, we can look and see, what did the model predict and what were the actual sales? And then you have these really cool statistical things like an R-square that tells you how well the model predicts. A perfect one is a 1. So you want something in the high 80s or low 90s. And then every model has an error rate, and there's this thing called MAPE, and you want something that's below like your high teens. And so our models, when we've got great data, are predicting and they have a 0.9 R-square and very, very low MAPEs. And so that's kind of the thing, is that for most marketers, they're used to using something where they don't actually go back and see how well the model says it predicted. And so we're living in this new world that, since it's probabilistic, we need to have a model that can be validated, where I can say, okay, I'm willing to put more money into this because the model shows me that it is actually working.
That is awesome. As the privacy police get more and more paranoid, how do you ensure that you stay compliant while delivering actionable insights?
Well, we built this from the beginning with that in mind. We built it with the idea of saying, what is the minimum amount of information that I'm going to be able to get as a marketer on an ad that I purchase? Well, I'll know what day it is because I purchased it today. I know how much money I spent. Nobody's going to hold that back from me. I'm also going to know how many impressions I had or video views that I had, because there's no user level data about that. And if there's any clicks, I'll have that. And guess what? That's all the information we need. We don't need anything else besides that. And at a minimum, you're going to be able to get that level of data. So we built into the platform this idea of kind of future proofing and understanding that you're right, Seth, the privacy police are going to crack down even more as time moves forward.
So, who is an ideal client for you?
Ideal client, spending across a multitude of different channels, spending 20 million or more per year, and suffering with this idea of trying to find a single source of truth that everyone in your organization across marketing and finance can agree upon, and that all of your vendors and agencies can all have this kumbaya moment where everyone is sharing the same source of data, but actually looking at it from a different angle. So your social agency is looking at social data, but it's part of the original data set, meaning they're not showing you data from platform. They're using the data that you're providing them. And those are the problems that we solve. The other big issue for marketers today is that it used to be all your sales came in and either in your store or online. Now it's your store, it's retail, and it's marketplaces, which are these kind of closed walled gardens where you can get very little data out of. We're able to work across all of the walled gardens. And so those are the folks that who are our best customers.
Any particular industry work better?
E-commerce, finance, pharma, folks that are consistently spending and they've got to hit their number.
Absolutely. Well, as the world gets more and more complicated, what are you kind of seeing as what's coming next?
Well, what's coming next is this idea of utilizing AI even more as part of the model. One of the things that most marketing teams really would love to have is like a 24/7 full-time analyst who just lives, eats, and breathes their data. And guess what? Large language models like a ChatGPT or others are perfect for that. So we're in the process now of doing some beta tests with client data, training models specifically on their data, and then allowing clients to talk to the analysts via text message. Keep it real simple. So imagine you have a full-time analyst in your pocket on your cell phone.
That you
Clients
can text on Valentine's Day.
That's right, exactly. It won't be me, but my full-time 24/7 analyst, AI analyst, will be answering those inquiries.
Awesome. And I love that obviously it would be unique to each client and their data. You've achieved so much success for your clients and your firm. What's your biggest challenge now?
My biggest challenge now is always is scaling it, but also keeping the personal touch that's there. I really, really enjoy helping marketers build out this single source of truth internally. And what's strange is back in the earlier days when I was building out my first company, when we would hit these hiccups where you face barriers because people have issues obviously with change and the way that people react to that change. And as I'm getting older, I'm enjoying that aspect of it, and that I think that's the part of the business that I want to continue to lean in on myself.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. So, a company spending $20 million a year, you're working with the C-suite marketing leaders for those folks who are hesitant about change, about switching to a new attribution system because they probably got a lot invested in their legacy version. Um, how do you convince them? How do you demonstrate the value and the ROI?
Well, typically for them, they're feeling a lot of frustration because they're seeing competitors that are trying things that are more upper funnel, if you will, like connected television or some digital out of home. And at first, when they see it, they're like, oh, that's not going to work for them. And then after 3 or 4 months, they still see the ads on TV, they see the streaming ads, and they're frustrated because they don't understand how their competitor can get it to work when they tried it a year ago and they couldn't prove that it worked. And that's the issue, is that proof. And what ends up happening as well is that marketers go in to meet with finance to get budgets for these tasks, or they want a larger marketing budget, and their numbers never match what finance has. So finance has this attitude that marketers can't add. And that's not the issue. It's just that their legacy attribution systems, the numbers don't match. And so this requires that single source of truth. So we can solve a lot of their frustration for them. But more importantly, the way that we prove out the ROI for them is that we design from the beginning a proof of concept to demonstrate the value. Because when you're selling into the C-suite and to large companies, there's a lot of risk that when you bring in a different measurement system, you can't say, oh, we don't have any risk. There's risk with any change that you make at a company at that size. So we try to remove as much of that risk as possible by designing a test that's going to be a win-win for everyone.
That's awesome. What other causes are you passionate about right now?
Oh, besides attribution,
Provalytics, yeah.
besides Provalytics, it's seeing my team and former team members from my previous company, seeing them grow personally and professionally. I just had a breakfast the other day with someone from my former sales team at C3 Metrics and hearing about a new position that's coming up. And it's exciting for me to see these young folks that started working with me in their 20s and seeing them grow professionally. And any little bit of help or assistance that I can provide, that to me is the most exciting thing.
That's awesome. For our folks watching or listening who want to learn more, where is the best place for us to send them to learn more about you and Provalytics?
Our best place is to go to provalytics.com, or they can go to Get Prova. That's GETPROVA.com, which is Get Proof. Or you can just find me on LinkedIn as well.
All right. Well, this has been Seth Greene with Jeff Greenfield from Provalytics.com. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening. We'll talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.